Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map, and we are going to be talking about twos today. So I was thinking about doing a little kind of gathering of information, mostly for myself, but then I thought this is the best way to actually study and learn things. So I thought I'm going to share it, I'm going to publicly do it for myself. So recently I noticed that I have been stalked by the twos. Um, so I pulled twos very various decks just to see what I will be inspired by when I look at all these different cards. And I would like to actually start with reading from, I don't have this deck anymore, from Tarot Illuminati, but it's by Kim Huggins. And I actually want to read the Two of Swords because this is actually my stalker. Two of Swords together with different twos, but mostly I keep pulling the Two of Swords, which I find truly, interesting. And especially interesting because the Two of Swords, of how we interpret the Two of Swords in Tough Deck, where the keyword is peace, and how we are kind of interpreting it in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which doesn't have such a peaceful connotation. I always found it a bit like confusing. Most of the other cards are kind of go together, within the system, but the Two of Swords was always like peace versus you can make a decision, stalemate, having this internal tension that you're holding on, cutting off your intuition, and all of this kind of stuff that we associate in Rider-Waite-Smith with the Two of Swords. So funny enough, it's Two of Swords, right? It can be these two opposing forces or two opposing ideas that we kind of need to resolve within ourselves. But I did go into Crowley's book and Book of Thoth, and I found some interesting information. To be honest, sometimes I read Book of Thoth and I don't understand half of what Crowley actually means, right? But I found something that inspired me. It's not that I fully understood it, but it inspired me to look at Two of Swords from his perspective with that peace, and also look at this Two of Swords with this perspective of dynamic silence. So in Book of Thoth, Crowley actually refers to twos as associated with Chokmah on Tree of Life. And Kether is the top Sephira on Tree of Life, and then Chokmah is one of the two that come out of it, right? But Crowley says that to a regular human being like us, Kether, the top one, is really concealed. It's a very kind of like the spiritual one. It's not truly visible. So actually Chokmah and the other one, which I forgot now, seems to be actually number one for an ordinary person, because he says only through reaching the twos, this is that the element actually starts to appear as the element itself. So twos, not aces, for Crowley has that sense of origination of element, like that the element actually starts to be visible. Aces are like Kether, they kind of just that spark, that promise of an element, and in twos we start to see the element. And he says that Chokmah is uncontaminated by any influence, and therefore the elements here appear in their original harmonious conditions. He says that, for example, Two of Wands, which is ruled by Mars in Aries, and Mars is very strong in Aries, right? It's like a really powerful. I love how Frida Harris depicted this. The Two of Wands, which is called Lord of Dominion, it's the fire at its best and highest form. So I never thought of twos like this. Usually you think of twos like, oh God, what should I choose, or duality or something. So from this kind of more tree of life bit and, you know, twos are connected to Chokma and are connected to the High Priestess because it's the big two, right? And Two of Cups, for example, Lord of Love, it's water at its best. And then he speaks about Two of Swords, which is my most, you know, desired kind of card that I would like to find out more about. So Two of Swords is called, I think in Golden Dawn, it was called the Lord of Peace Restored. But because Crowley explains that Chokma is uncontaminated, is the kind of purest of all the element itself, purest form, that he kind of chucks away the restored, and it just calls the Two of Swords Lord of Peace, because restored would mean that there was some interruption, and in Crowley's mind, twos didn't get any interruption to the element yet because there were just aces before them, right? So he speaks about this not much when you read in the Book of Thoth about twos, but he gives a little kind of hints where you can read more about the idea of silence that he speaks about, which connects to that moon in Libra, which is my moon, and the Two of Swords. And he sends you away to read like a little essay in the full cut, and there's one more that he gives. I only read the one in the full cut, and probably I could read it again and again and again to get like truly what's meant there. But he speaks about silence in such a beautiful way. He says its silence is the equilibrium of perfection, its innocence. Fear must be cast by love, and love is the law, right? And every act must be righteousness and truth. What is my true will? And he says, until we become innocent, which, you know, to me is the question mark. What does it mean, innocent? I can kind of sense it intuitively what he means, that pure innocence of the spirit. But he says, until we become innocent, we are certain to judge our will from the outside. And the true will should spring as a fountain of light, that's all Crowley's words, from within, and flow unchecked, seething with love into the ocean of life. So beautiful how he writes that. So for him, this idea of silence is this perfection. The silence is not the numb silence, I can't hear anything, or I'm blocking my intuition, I don't, like, you know, I don't know, it's just this numbness. He says that this is a dynamic silence. This is a form of silence that always varies depending on, you know, the particular imperfection. And this is like encountering an essence of the thing. So the effect of this silence is always this perfection. So I found it like really interesting. And this is just like a tip of the iceberg, right? Because I'm still mulling over these ideas of silence, dynamic silence. But I get this, you know, this is the albino white, but in the regular Rider-Waite-Smith, right, she sits in the white dress that so fits that idea of this dynamic silence, and also that kind of maybe internal tension that you try to hold within the, you know, happenings of life, or two different ideas or two opposing forces. I think it kind of connects. I started seeing more of a connection between these two cards, but I remember that it always threw me off when I saw, you know, the piece on Crowley's Thoth deck on Two of Swords, and then I was learning all this stuff about Two of Swords from Rider-Waite-Smith that I thought, like, why is it so different? It just didn't feel right somehow, didn't feel the same. And the thing that I'm doing now with my body, that kind of feels maybe a little bit like that tension, that internal thinking that goes on. But yeah, going deeper underneath this, that's why maybe she's blinded, because she's connecting with that dynamic silence within herself. So this Two of Swords is really kind of opened up some new ways for me to look at the Two of Swords in general, and also to maybe reconcile a little bit of that internal struggle that I was feeling when I was looking at Two of Swords and kind of trying to figure out. But I wanted to read this Two of Swords from that book. So it says, the fulcrum of the mind. And I really like this quotation. Come to find me on the shores of the world. So I'm going to just show her maybe. Come to find me on the shores of the world and all the in-between places of life. Meet me at the crossroads of every possibility and at the turning point of every tide. Find me between paradoxes and at the birth of paradox, for I am that which occurs in between change, the state between changed states. When your mind conceives of the idea, I am the intake of breath and the pause before you speak it. When you entertain a choice, I am the moment of stillness before the decision. When I read this after reading Crowley's Book of Thoth, I felt like, wow, that totally kind of depicts what he was saying. And he says that, yeah, this kind of the idea of silence is this like fluidity, and how that silence is a dynamic silence in between, and that you have to take, you know, some time to truly understand what that means. And I think I still need that time, but still I wanted to share for you, maybe to inspire you to, you know, investigate by yourself. So Two of Pentacles, the last one here, it's called the Lord of Harmonious Change, or the Lord of Change. And it's ruled by Jupiter in Capricorn. So expansiveness of Jupiter, and then the kind of ambitious manifestation drive of Capricorn, and its connection with the priest. It has connection to the priestesses because of the element of earth, right? And he says also that's the final hair in tetragrammaton, and the earth is throne of the spirit, right? So he says that having gone to the bottom of one state, one immediately comes up again to the top. So this card is manifests the symbolism of the serpent of the endless band, and it's this constant kind of coming down and up motion of, you know, creating that movement and creating the change, harmonious change. It happens kind of by itself, like a natural law. So it's really interesting. I don't know, I just found those tools really inspiring, you know, and they spoke to me a little bit deeper than, you know, before. And I've been sitting with, you know, tarot since forever. I love the connection of tools to the High Priestess and to the book, which always goes like, you know, learn more or open up to the knowledge to come to you. And that there's always something that you will not figure out, like that mystery, you know, that flows behind. The Two of Pentacles, it's very similar to that Crowley's card, and also to maybe, you know, Rider-Waite-Smith, but I think the Rider-Waite-Smith Two of Pentacles, it's also fairly curious. I was always wondering about this strange hat that the guy has, like, which looks a little bit like a penis, right? In Albano White, he's really red. We usually don't tend to see what's happening in the background, but there are the wavy waves and those shapes that going, you know, it doesn't look so comfortable. There is this sense of keeping the balance between this moving from up and down options, and life going up and down, and creating that eternal balancing act that we humans go through. It's interesting that also feels active because of that hat, and also because of that color in particularly in the Albano White deck. And Two of Cups also, of course, beautiful, the loving, and the Two of Wands with that dominion by Mars in Aries, that opportunity, that kind of creative force, right? And this sense of will that can be used to make something happen. It's really, really interesting. So with these are similar, the cups and the pentacles, but I felt like maybe the wands and I actually maybe the wands also have this sense of growth, and even though it creates like Gebo rune, you know, what creates that kind of crossroads, where do I go? But it has plants, it has leaves, you know, foliage, it's has this sense of growth, whereas here with the Two of Swords we have something that is protective, nearly protected, like this even though it's a jewel often, you know, two swords crossing, right? But it has this sense of softness and some kind of stability. It actually goes much more when I look at it now with Crowley's Two of Swords, with that peace, that I get a sense of looking at this card, that looking at this and thinking jewel, two people arguing, you know, it can be as well. But it's interesting that when you look at the card, it doesn't give you this idea. I also looked at the Orasoma, you know, so there is these two priestesses, and it's interesting that this Tree of Life came up. So this is the priestess, the regular, the outward movement, you know, Orasoma has two sets of majors, and this is return, so the kind of evolved one, or the one that worked through or everything. So there's no secrecy anymore. It's like what's hiding kind of behind the veil. And these are the colors involved. So there's the blue and kind of red. And this would be Two of Cups. I mean, sorry, Two of Pentacles. So this is kind of all happening when you stay open to this. There's Two of Swords. So this one seems more like maybe that spiritual duel, but like it's two opinions and two kind of sense of change that's created with meeting of two minds. Two of Wands seems very like journey-like, you know, like even like a new soul's coming to earth. And Two of Cups has that a very beautiful connection, not only through body, but also through spiritual body. I looked at the Voyager Tarot, and we have the High Priestess, and because she sets the tone for the minors in this deck, they always connected to the majors. We have this the Two of Wands, which is purity of maybe will. We have Two of Cups, which is equilibrium, and they all have these bluish colors of High Priestess. There's Two of Worlds, which is Two of Swords, which is reflection. And I mean, sorry, Two of Worlds is Two of Pentacles, reflection. And then there is Two of Crystals, which is Two of Swords, and it's equanimity, right? So just thought I share this with you. And then this is interesting with the Shimmering Veil Tarot, because we have the High Priestess who holds the matrix of like energy matrix in her hands. So it reminded me of the, you know, Crowley's High Priestess who sits, she is in the matrix herself, right? That's amazing how Frida Kahlo, kind of this web weird of energy. And then in Sila's cards, she's very elemental. So this would be Two of Fire, when, you know, there's this opening, you invited out into the adventure. There's Two of Air, like holding two swords, like you holding that tension, that dynamic silence before the action. There's Two of Pentacles, where you actually start to manifest things or start shifting ideas around, and of course Two of Cups. So I love this deck because it is very elemental. When you look at it, you know, like, you know, air, earth, water, fire. So this Shimmering Veil Tarot shows this too. It's really cool. Also just Lisa's the San Croix deck with her beautiful, simple depictions. So High Priestess is Isis, right? And then we have this Two of Swords, we have Two of Cups, we have Two of Wands with that dominion, and we have Two of Pentacles, which I liked how it's shown, where you have that's what Crowley writes, you know, day coming up and night, and it's a constant flow of things and constant flow of maybe jewel things or different things. I looked also at the Headcrafters Tarot because it's really cute, and I marked some of the things, but if you have this deck, you can check. She picked, so this is by Letitia Guthrie, and artwork, of course, by Joanna Powell Colbert. So Letitia writes here that she picked plants that are about pollination, choices, and reciprocity. And they attract birds, moths, butterflies, and beneficial insects. And as a herbalist, the herb crafters, you learn about your choices and how they affect the ecosystem. The herb crafter confronts what this means to her and consults her intuition to decide what to do about it. The two cards spark the beginning of action that eventually leads to reciprocity. So twos challenge us to create balance. And we have the High Priestess, which is the mugwort, the herb of dreams, right? We have Two of Earth, which is witch hazel, and she speaks here about full hands and rich life, balance on the edges of depth and lightness, and find joy in each moment. And so then it's water, it's the Two of Mallow, and this is let love in, soften dry and brittle wounds, and welcome genuine connection. I really love this deck. A Two of Fire is Bee Balm. So here we have the harness power of desire. That's that dominion. The Mars is in Aries. Embrace creativity with confidence. Courageously step towards the heat. And the Two of Air, which is Chicory. And Chicory says release long-held beliefs, be receptive to guidance, and open to unlikely partnerships. I love this herb. Actually, I see this herb around me a lot. I love the color of the flowers. It's really gorgeous, kind of peaceful. It's really good for a liver. Like we have chicory coffee as well, right? From the root. So it's good to get clarity, I guess. So it's interesting to just, I thought to just look at the plants as well to see. I could also check the herbal tarot, you know, by, who is it by? You know which one I mean, the old one, the Rider-Waite-Smith one. So I think that's it. I also maybe just finish with showing you the Barbara Walker deck. So High Priestess, I like how the two keys are thrown on the floor. Is it the gift from the Pope? And then there's Balance for Two of Swords. I love that whiteness. There's Romance for Two of Cups. I like that one, the Two of Wands, Alliance. So that's interesting. And Change for Two of Pentacles. So very kind of tough as well. So with Two of Pentacles, one serpent is merging with another, yes, and Two of Pentacles are sliding into this opposite, suggests gain where there was loss and vice versa, growth, alteration of new ideas, the yin and yang opposites are illusions. It hints at the kind of understanding that opposites are illusions and all things are ultimately different forms of the same thing. So there's a lot of stuff with tarot when we can go like really deeply philosophical, but I hope this was at least inspiring, you know, to some of you, and maybe you will go off and do your own research about twos and or any cards that maybe stop you, by the way. But I have learned a little bit more about Two of Swords after all these years, and I still sit with that inspiration of dynamic silence and what it truly means, and how do you find that in-between state. That reminds me of meditation, how you breathe and how your breath has the space in between, how you have to explore the space in between breaths when there is this kind of in between state, but it's a dynamic one. It's not something like, if you notice it, if you actually observe it, it gives you another um, like that spaciousness, you know. So yeah, Two of Swords, interesting. And interesting how also Two of Swords was the one that was really kind of opposite or different in these different systems. So I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you see in twos? What's your favorite two? Share in the comments. It would be lovely to hear more from also your perspective, from, you know, sharing the comments. I would love to learn more from you. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I speak to you soon. Bye.